Dzień dobry, witam Państwa bardzo serdecznie na naszym panelu związanym z rynkiem pracy Ukrainy, jego problemami, and related problems and challenges,
i rozwiązaniami, jakie
as well as
możemy
solutions
zastosować
that we
zarówno
can
na naszym
apply
polskim rynku
both
pracy,
in our
jak i
Polish
też
labor
na
market
rynku
as well as
Ukrainy.
the Ukrainian
Witam
labor
w moim
market.
panelu
In this
szanownych
panel, I would
gości.
like to
Witam
welcome
panią
our
minister
distinguished
Funduszy
guest,
Polityki Regionalnej Małgorzatą
the Minister
Jarosińską-Jedynak,
of
która
Regional
łączy się z nami
Policy,
dzisiaj z Warszawy, z ministerstwa. Witam pani minister.
Małgorzata Jarosińska-Jedynak, who is online
Chciałem
today.
również powitać moich gości.
Today, I would like to
Mam tutaj
also
po
welcome
mojej lewej
the remaining
stronie
guests that I have on my
panią
left.
Natalii Holczynkową,
Ms.
panią naczelnik Wydziału
Natalia
Stosunków
Holczynkova,
Międzynarodowych
the
i
chairman
Inwestycji
of
Rady
the
Miejskiej
Department
Czernichowa.
of International Relations of
Mam
Czernichov.
również po mojej lewej stronie panią Svitlanę Chystiakową,
Svitlana Chystiakova, Vice President,
jak i też mam mojego dobrego kolegę, ale też przedsiębiorcę,
of the
pana Adriana Furmana, prezesa grupy AF, fundatora również Fundacji Biznes Bez Barier.
Mr. Adrian Furman, the founder of CEO of Grupa AF, spółka ZO. We will also be joined by Mr. Seminikinov, the mayor of Knopow.
Drodzy Państwo, dużo się dzieje na rynku pracy.
Ladies and gentlemen, a lot is happening in the labor market.
Jeden z głównych paneli.
It's one of the main discussion panels devoted to this discussion in order to transfer it to focus on the labor market at this Ukrainian World for Ukraine Summit. And I have a question to Ms. Jarosińska-Jedynak about the labor market. That is, over 7 million people have come to Poland. Of course, out of them, over 1,400,000 have remained in Poland. What activities are undertaken by the Ministry of Funds and Regional Policy in the context of the improvement of the situation of Ukrainian refugees in Polish labor market? Thank you very much for this question, and once again I would like to welcome you very warmly. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you in person today because my professional obligations made me stay in Warsaw. In answer to your question, I think the quickest way to provide support has been taking into account the needs of the Ukrainian refugees. They are already taken into account as part of the social fund. So here we talk about professional activization. We have projects devoted to comprehensive labor activization. We also have support for companies and company employees through providing development services right now at the regional level, directed at the small and medium-sized company sector, but also to people who have left Ukraine because of the war. We also provide support for care of children up to 3 years old. We have places at nurseries and kindergartens. And what's most important is language education as well as labor counseling in the context of looking for new jobs, new vacancies. There is also a program related to development and education. It's the project called Chance, New Possibilities for Adults. This program has been complemented with a component which is devoted to supporting Ukrainian adults who are entitled to the temporary protection in Poland. And what we do as part of this project is most of all increasing basic skills, language skills, social competencies, which will make it possible to function in everyday life. For example, going to offices or looking for a job. About 14.5 million zloty was devoted to this aim, but we also have activities, and this will be about 23 million euros devoted to other areas. Also, local governments from Europe decided to contribute about 107 million euros, out of which 93 euros is from European Social Fund and the rest from the European Regional Development Fund. Apart from that, we are at the latest stage of the use of the funds in the context of the new financial perspective from 2021 to 2027, where as part of the Social Fund Plus, we are going to integrate through social and economic activities the inhabitants of the third countries, including immigrants. We are planning a lot of ambitious activities at the level of voivodeships, and this will be managed by marshals of different regions, but also at the level of the country. And these activities are going to focus on direct support for foreigners by providing services which will allow them to function better in a Polish society, which is courses of Polish, training courses focused on culture, on Polish values, and also different aspects of life. We want to implement this model by means of the Center for Integration of Foreigners, where we are going to spend over 230 million euros. This is what we are planning as part of this support at both regional and national levels, where we want to apply these means through supporting processes such as the management of migration. These are very large sums which will help the Ukrainians who are fleeing Ukraine to find a job, but these means will also find employers to adjust these services that they provide to the everyday needs. Thank you very much, Minister. That's right, these are very large sums. I have recently heard that such direct support to refugees has exceeded 5.5 billion zloty. Can you confirm this? Yes, I do confirm this. I think it's a lot more. We are talking about 5.5 billion zloty of means which come from both the Polish budget, but also from European budget. And these activities are undertaken all the time. They are pursued all the time in many different areas of life. We are not just talking about things related to jobs, but also about everyday needs, such as accommodation, food, buying cleaning products, etc. So these funds, which are part of the national budget, which is 5.5 billion zloty, but also it's the support that is given to every citizen of our country who open their houses, open their hearts. It's everything we do through all the activities we have started. Thank you very much.
Adrianie.
Mr. Furman,
ale też fundator fundacji.
you are an entrepreneur, but also a founder of a foundation. You are closely connected or related to the labor market of people with disabilities. How does the situation look when it comes to the labor market in case of people with disabilities, people from Ukraine who have disabilities, who came from Ukraine to Poland? How is this job market open to these people? How does it look? what are the chances of people with disabilities in Poland, those who are from Ukraine, to find jobs in Poland? Of course, dear Minister, Rafał, dear colleagues, and dear audience, we are also here to talk about positive things as well as the negative things which can become positive. While the problem of people with disabilities who are educated and for whom disability is not a problem, not only in their professional life, but also in social life. So when it comes to these people, there is no problem. I have, when it comes to programmers market, there are a lot of vacancies. You can choose highly paid jobs immediately. They are accessible immediately. And there is no problem with that. But let's remember that the lower we go, the worse it is when it comes to disabilities. And it's more difficult to activate these people. We also talk about language barrier. When the main language of communication is not English, as in the case of computer programmers, then it's Polish. And here we also face a problem which also relates to all of us. Of course, our friends from Ukraine could be divided into people who do know Polish and quite well. Our friends are a good example here. But on the other hand, there is an example of my family from Chernihiv in central Ukraine, where this barrier was a problem. Also, the ability to adjust to Polish law is another problem. Well, let's take nurses, for example. In every hospital, practically, there are vacancies for nurses. My foundation has founded translations of diplomas when it comes to certification of nurses' abilities and qualifications. But it was difficult to explain that it is important. At some point, I realized that from their point of view, I am multiplying problems which may not be present in their labor market. For example, the matter of a diploma, the Polish language, the certificate which is needed in case of communication. That was a problem. Other problems are, for example, that we as a foundation could pursue training projects focused on Polish language learning. Well, it's obvious. Well, this might seem obvious, but unfortunately, at the level of Dolnośląskie Voivodeship, where we are close to the Świdnik magistrate or the one in Wrocław, well, there were a lot of problems in implementing those projects, and we are still waiting.
Panie prezesie, jeżeli chodzi o osoby z
When it comes to people
statystyki
with disabilities, and when we check statistics, we talk about 150,000 people who are now in Poland, and they're expecting the confirmation from the Polish legal system What's your opinion when it comes to that? If somebody wants to get a certificate of being a person with disabilities, talking about my experience, me and our minister present here, we know that Polish legal system requires a reform. As far as I heard, it's being prepared. When it comes to problems related to people from Ukraine and also people from Poland, it depends on regional teams. And those teams work differently. From my experience, we have a person who's been half paralyzed. He cannot move, cannot walk, and cannot get that certificate, that confirmation. I believe that's a systemic issue. It's not related to the fact whether this is a citizen of Poland or Ukraine or Belarus. We need to make sure that the system works properly. We can assume that when we talk about documentation, notary documentation, there are no problems. It's okay, it's easy to get that certificate or confirmation. Natalia, if you could tell us, please, a little bit more about your city where there were 300,000 people before the outbreak of the war. I think that right now there are 100,000 citizens. Can you tell us, please, what's the labor market there? Because the city has been bombarded. Many employers decided to leave Chernihiv. So what's the labor market? Could you describe it, please? How many unemployed people are there? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really glad that I can be here and discuss the issues. I represent the municipality of Chernihiv. This is the city that's in the north of Ukraine, and it's clear that from the first days of war, our city was a natural barrier when it comes to reaching Kiev. And because of the shelling, bombing, strikes on the missiles, the city was destroyed. We had the economic school of Kiev that was destroyed. Chernihiv was the third city after some western cities of Ukraine that was destroyed. Our city has 280,000 of citizens, and we observed that many people who can work left our city. Of course, the infrastructure was destroyed. We talk about water walks, heat networks, schools, nurseries, and what's more, we had 800 residential buildings that were destroyed. There were direct hittings to private buildings, and we know that there were massive strikes on private buildings. Business buildings were destroyed, and the neighborhood was struck. And we talk about aerial attacks. We know that various businesses, entrepreneurships were destroyed. And of course, as we are a city close to Belarus, it's difficult to plan anything for the future. I'd like to give you a little bit of statistics when it comes to the unemployment rates. It has grown by 13%, and we talk about officially registered unemployed people. And when it comes to the vacancies, we observe the decrease by 35%. When it comes to salaries, they are below the average. We can see that the possibilities for finding the employment are restricted, limited. What's more, I'd like to say that we are close to the border, and experts cooperate together. Business people, people from municipality work together, and they created the special economic area. That's because we wanted to attract investments, and we have various pieces of information included in that law that describe and regulate the system of investments and some technical aspects of that. This is something that we've been working on for quite a long time, and we believe that our community will get help. This project was registered, and we expect that our board will accept the law and that the regions will also support us. We suffered a lot. We're a region that's not competitive right now, and some areas, some regions that were not directly attacked can support us too. I'd like to say a few words about the local authorities, especially when it comes to improving the labor market. We want to make sure that we create the environment for people who left so that they could come back. We're grateful that you provided shelter for refugees. Some of those people can stay in other cities, in other countries. They may never come back. They can create new families, start new lives in different countries. We have no time. That's why we need to act now. As local authorities in our city, in Chernihiv, together with our mayor, we've been working hard on creating the possibilities, security systems, bunkers, so that we assure that the hit provision is never stopped, hindered. That's a very important criterion. We managed to reopen the school. That was our first goal. We wanted to create special solutions for children so that they could learn remotely, because if children cannot learn, then families decide to leave. And that was the first goal, to make sure that children have access to education. All the bunkers that we have were created from scratch. We worked together as the city council. We had 200 people, 220 people who decided to come back, who believe that there's some future in our city. Of course, the stability, security is still not there, but we're working hard on creating the idea of development. And we think about what's going to happen in 20 years. We have the concept of the future. We have development projects for our municipalities, and if anybody is interested in those projects, I encourage you to cooperate with us. We expect that the economic growth, that's the basis of the future development, will happen. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Svitlana Svitlana Chystiakova.
Państwo mieli kontakt z uchodźcami już w pierwszych
You
godzinach
cooperated with refugees
wojny.
at the beginning
Wielu,
of the
którzy
war,
przybyło
first
do tej
hours
pory,
of the war.
jest związanych bardzo z Pani
Many
fundacją.
people
Jak
who
wygląda właśnie
came here
ten pracownik,
to Poland
który przybył
are
z
closely
Ukrainy do
connected
Polski?
to the
Jakie to są
foundation.
osoby
So could you
i
describe
jakie osoby
a person,
znalazły pracę, a jakie
employee
do tej pory
who came from
nie mogą
Ukraine
znaleźć
to
tej
Poland?
pracy w
What
Polsce?
people
Mogłaby Pani
managed
powiedzieć coś,
to
kilka
get a
słów?
job in Poland and what people face problems? Thank you very much. My name is Svitlana Chystiakova, and since March to July 2022, together with 500 volunteers, we ran a help center Mokotów in Warsaw. We managed to help to aid 20,000 refugees. We estimated that was around 6 million zlotys. We helped refugees who came to Poland after the 24th of February. People could get free aid, and I mean hygiene products, clothes, food, shoes, daily products. We were open to some specific needs of people with disabilities. We cooperate with various foundations who can support people with disabilities. We managed, especially because we, as a team, we didn't have any volunteering background or running a foundation. We were people who had own businesses or were just regular employees of various corporate companies. So being together as a local community, we managed to run this project. This project was known in the whole country because that was an example of the bottom-up initiative. To answer your question, daily we met women with children who were coming to us, searching for help. We were talking about their needs. And the first primary need was this need to communicate, because the language barrier is great. And at the beginning it was really difficult. The majority of volunteers are Polish. The women, the refugees, were afraid of the situation. They could speak Ukrainian, but we could see that they talked through their emotions, fear. First days were difficult, and after some time, first weeks, we created basic dictionaries. We learned some basic Ukrainian words. We wanted to create a positive atmosphere so that people who came to our center, to our hub, felt good. Of course, we discussed the issue of employment. After some time, we decided that language barrier is the main problem, and the second problem is the fact that women who came to Poland came with children. So the profile of a refugee is a woman, 20 to 40 years old, with two, on average, children, and with her mother. So we have 4 or 5 people in a family where this woman is the person who can bring the bacon.
Więc z jednej strony taka kobieta, która już pokonała tę drogę, żeby uciec i znaleźć się w bezpiecznym miejscu, chronić swoją rodzinę i swoje dzieci, jest bardzo dzielna, ale
she's brave. Right now she needs to undertake this next step and find employment. So further challenges. She needs to find a place for her children, a daycare for her children. It's really difficult right now because the facilities are overcrowded, and I mean nurseries, kindergartens, and primary schools.
Mimo wielkiej chęci, mimo to, że to są
Even
wykwalifikowani
though
pracownicy, bardzo często
highly
z wyższym
qualified,
doświadczeniem,
they're willing to work,
wykształceniem,
they
przepraszam,
have experience,
są
it is
jakby rzeczy, które nie pozwalają
difficult
mi
for
podjąć
them
tej
to
pracy, tak?
find job.
Albo
There are
w ogóle, albo
circumstances
na
that
cały
hinder
etat, czyli dorabiają
that
gdzieś
process.
częściowo i co też tutaj
Or
chciałabym
they start
podgłośnić,
working
to,
part-time
że podejmują pracę dużo poniżej własnej
and
kwalifikacji,
they work
ponieważ nie umieją się
below
dogadać w
their
języku polskim
qualifications. They cannot communicate in
boją się,
Polish,
bo nie znają,
and they're afraid of that situation. They don't
jak
know
wygląda polskie prawo w obszarze
the law
pracy
in Poland. They don't
kodeksu
know
pracy,
labor law.
więc naszym zadaniem jest
And
wsparcie
our
z każdej
task
strony,
is to
więc też
support
bardzo
them.
cieszymy tutaj na
That's why
słowo
I'm
pani
really
minister o tym, że
happy that I'm
te
here and that
kwoty,
I
które
heard
dzisiaj
what
padły,
Minister
oraz
said.
to, że pod każdą stroną ministerstwo wybadało ten problem
We
i
know that the
krok po
ministry
kroku wdraża
checked
rozwiązania,
every
które pomogą w
aspect of
końcu
that problem and that they're working on a
kobietom z
solution
Ukrainy
that
integrować się w
will help
polskie społeczeństwo,
women from Ukraine to
godne podziwu i mam
participate
nadzieję, że to wszystko
in the
nam się
Polish
uda.
society.
Dziękuję bardzo pani.
Thank you very much.
Rzeczywiście jest tak, że 64%
And yes, 64%
stanowiły i stanowią kobiety.
of refugees are women.
Proporcja przed wojną
But this
była
percentage
odwrotna, że 64
was
to byli mężczyźni,
quite
którzy
opposite.
przyjeżdżali do nas do pracy,
64% of refugees
a
were
kobiety były
men who
36%.
came to Poland to
Natomiast
work.
mamy teraz rzeczywiście
And right now, yes, we
dużo
know
kobiet,
that there are
ale
many
tych
women.
inicjatyw na pewno oddolnych, tak jak
There are
pani minister
various
tu
bottom-up
wspomniała, będzie bardzo
initiatives.
dużo. Zatrudnionych w Polsce zostało ponad 600
We
tysięcy
know that
obywateli Ukrainy
600,000
po
citizens of
wybuchu
Ukraine
wojny,
were
co
employed
stanowi
in Poland
ewenement na
after
skalę
the outbreak of
aktywizacji,
the war.
na całym świecie
That's
uchodźców wojennych.
a
Żaden
significant
kraj w
number.
tak krótkim czasie
There's
tylu
no other
uchodźców
country
wojennych,
in
co udało się
Europe
Polsce,
that
więc
would
na pewno dużo mamy do
enable
zrobienia,
that.
ale jeszcze bardzo dużo
I
przed
believe that
nami.
there's a lot to do,
Pani minister,
but still we've achieved a lot. Minister,
wracam do tematu
coming
osób
back to
najbardziej
the
wykluczonych,
previous
osób
topic,
z niepełnosprawnością.
people with
Bardzo bliskie
disabilities.
pani ministerstwu sprawy, ponieważ też
Your
program
ministry
Dostępność Plus.
deals with those issues.
Czy są jakieś inicjatywy
Could you
dedykowane
tell us a little bit
właśnie
more
bezpośrednio
about
osobom
new
z
initiatives
niepełnosprawnością,
that are directed
które
to
są w grupie
people
uchodźców
with disabilities,
przybyłych z
people
Ukrainy?
who are also refugees?
Dziękuję bardzo. Ja też uzupełniając poprzednią wypowiedź chciałam nadmienić, że żaden kraj nie w tak szybkim tempie nie przygotował też rozwiązań
hasn't
legislacyjnych,
prepared legislative
które
solutions
dają bardzo
at
wiele
such speed.
możliwości
These
właśnie osobom
solutions
z
provide
Ukrainy,
a lot of
które chcą
possibilities for
tutaj u
people
nas
from
w
Ukraine
Polsce, czy to
who want
rozpoczynać
to
swoją karierę
start
zawodową,
their professional
czy w
career
ogóle korzystać ze wszystkich świadczeń tak
or
samo jak
use
i
all the
obywatele polscy.
benefits
Więc
here
myślę,
in
że to
Poland,
też
like Polish
bardzo
citizens.
duży
So I
sukces
think
i
it's a
warto
great
o nim
success
wspominać.
and we
Jeżeli
should
chodzi o
mention
kwestie
it.
związane
When it
z
comes to
osobami z
issues related to
niepełnosprawnościami,
people with
które
disabilities
są w grupie uchodźców z
who
Ukrainy, a
are
pojawiają się
also
oczywiście
Ukrainian
i nie jest to
refugees,
mała
and
liczba
it's
tych
not a
osób,
small
to na
percentage,
pewno, tak jak Pan też
then
wspomniał
definitely,
odnośnie rządowego
like
programu
you
Dostępność
said
Plus, który
when
mamy przyjemność
mentioning
koordynować
Accessibility
i
Plus
którego celem jest
government
też
program,
znoszenie
which we
różnych barier w
coordinate
przestrzeni
and whose
publicznej.
aim is
To są
to
też
remove
działania, które
barriers
służą
in the public
wszystkim osobom,
space.
tym osobom z
Well, these are
szczególnymi
activities
potrzebami,
which are for the benefit of
również
everyone, especially
seniorom, nie
those
tylko
with
osobom z
special needs
niepełnosprawnościami i
and
to
senior, not only people
niezależnie
with
od ich
disabilities, but
pochodzenia czy
also
też
seniors,
obywatelstwa. Więc
regardless
traktujemy
of
tutaj w
their
ramach programu
origins
Dostępność
or
Plus wszystkich na
citizenship.
równych
So we
zasadach
want to treat
i
everyone
każdy z
on
nas chce być w taki
equal
sposób
terms because
traktowany.
each of us wants
Dlatego
to be
te
treated this
działania
way.
i rozwiązania,
That's why
które
these activities
podejmujemy
and
w programie,
solutions
na
that we
przykład remonty
undertake as
dworców
part of the
kolejowych,
program
zakupy dostępnych
such as purchase of the accessible public transport vehicles or accessible healthcare, etc., serve all people with disabilities, also those who came here from Ukraine. These are often activities related to assembling some facilities which make it easier to move around, also related to transport. And many things are also accessible in Ukrainian language. There is also help of an assistant. There are assistants who can speak Ukrainian, who can provide such services, and they also know Ukrainian. There is one initiative I really wanted to tell you about because these are activities dedicated to people from with disabilities from Ukraine. For them, there is a special information telephone line. I'm talking about the people with hearing disabilities. We know that in Ukraine there are about 45,000 of people with deaf people who only use Ukrainian Sign Language, and it turns out that as a result of war, even up to 2,000 such people came to Poland. They need support using Ukrainian Sign Language. Refugees who come to people very often come across big barrier in communication because Ukrainian Sign Language is completely different from Polish Sign Language. Polish services which provide help are not able to communicate with a deaf person from Ukraine even if they know Polish Sign Language. That's why in March this year we started a nationwide video line for deaf people who escaped war in Ukraine. This video line is free of charge, so the representatives of Border Patrol, volunteers, etc., can connect with this line, as well as deaf people. Anybody who needs help with translation from Ukrainian Sign Language to Polish language. There is access to the services of a video translator through many channels such as Viber, Skype, Telegram. There are many channels. This video line is open 24/7. There are 4 interpreters who translate from Ukrainian Sign Language to Polish language and the other way around, which makes it possible to translate all information in real time. Translators also provide help filling in documents, going to offices, dealing with some personal things. In the first months of this video line, over 1,000 people who use Ukrainian Sign Language use this line. So we see it as great success in reaching deaf people who have a big problem communicating. Also, our Polish citizens, not only Ukrainian citizens. When we mention people with disabilities from Ukraine, as I said, these activities that are undertaken as part of projects co-financed from the European Social Fund, people with disabilities from Ukraine can use these social services, such as door-to-door transport services when it comes to people with reduced mobility. They can use assistance services, services of day care or day assistance, self-help groups, or psychological support, which takes into account language issues as well. We all know, we all realize how the psychological is really needed for those people who come from Ukraine, from the place where there is a war raging. So here we also extended the project that we've been pursuing so far in such aspects that the people who have a language barrier can use these services as well. So there is a lot of support for people with disabilities from Ukraine, and people with disabilities from Ukraine can use these services just like Polish citizens with disabilities, and we know that we use them on everyday basis. Thank you very much, Minister.
Dostępność plus, Adrian.
Accessibility plus.
Bardzo też bliski
Adrian.
tobie temat.
It's a topic which is close to your heart. When it comes to international matters of perception of disabilities, but also accessibility, in your opinion, what solutions should be implemented after the war in Ukraine, but also during the war when it comes to people with disabilities? People who, like in Poland, need a lot of support. Of course, I can answer this question. I was really lucky because Mr. Kwieciński involved me in the prototype work on this Polish Act on Accessibility, and then the minister took over, and she's been continuing ever since. Over a period of a few years, because now it's fourth year running, I am the person for accessibility at the ministry. I have also seen how American Disability Act was created. It's a law implemented during the tenure of George Bush Sr. at the beginning of the 1990s. There was a fight for implementation of this law, and it was a compulsive fight, so to speak. So the people with disabilities in the US really fought for it by means of strikes, for example. Today, we are also preparing for this. We are ahead of the European legislation, and it's good. Let's remember that we are talking about accessibility, but there is also a European Visibility Act on this horizon. It's a much bigger act, similar to American Disability Act, which is also it's also going to be implemented in Poland. This accessibility, well, let's call it accessibility plus. So it's going to refer to the commercial market, because in most cases, this present Accessibility Act only refers to the public market. So that was my introduction. Now, I think that we should draw conclusions. Minister knows that every quarter, when there is a meeting of the board for accessibility, we need to mature to discuss some people, and I think that the ministry is getting close, because Dominika wrote me an email recently, and she said that probably there is a need to present a presentation by me focusing on the fact that the standard of accessibility should be presented by people with disabilities, because they are the best ambassadors of this project. And they can promote the notion of accessibility at low cost. No product placement, no celebrity in a popular series will replace an activity of a person with disabilities who is engaged in the promotional activities of accessibilities. So that's the first argument. If we are to promote accessibility, let's do it through activating people with disabilities. Let's provide them with the right budgets, and then I can assure you that money invested in this kind of promotion will be very, very effective. Another conclusion, which I also lobby every quarter at the board meeting, is something I saw in the US. That is, if we are to spend money for accessibility, we have to include people with disabilities. It's not only about building a ramp. Świdnica is a good example. We built a construction of 300 meters length. It was possible to make it more easily and at a lower cost. So this has to be followed by people with disabilities because it's them who will be able to audit these ideas best and to even make it. We are now talking also about communication accessibility, digital accessibility, but now we have a world in which a person like me, who is not able to raise a cup of coffee, is, however, able to run a construction company. So we are also talking about professional activation of people with disabilities. That's how it looks in the US. People with disabilities in the US simply fought for it. So if we are to build a ramp, we should include people with disabilities. Well, it's an extreme example, of course. When it comes to the Polish market, there is an example of coordinators of accessibility. From my personal experience, it seems that if an accessibility coordinator is present in public organizations, public structures, if they act effectively, usually it's a person with disabilities.
So if we were to advise, a similar law that we have in Poland would also work in Ukraine. Yes, and I encourage everyone to trust people with disabilities. We would like to highlight that those people should be people with disabilities. Thank you very much. I got the info that the mayor of Konotop won't be able to be here today, but we have the deputy mayor. So we have Svitlana Samsonenko to join us here on the stage. Good afternoon.
Pani Svitlano, do pani pytanie.
Svitlana, a question to you.
Pani Svitlano, do pani
Once again, a question that I'd like to ask. Could you tell us a little bit more about the labor market in your city? You have a city of 85,000 citizens before the outbreak of the war. What's the situation now? I know that the city was destroyed. I know that employers left the city. So what's the plan? How do you want to fight for the labor market and for the unemployed? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Svitlana, and I come from Konotop city. Our city is 60 kilometers away from the border, Russian border. I'm really sorry because the mayor of our city was supposed to be here. Right now he's in Warsaw and he's having a meeting with the president of Warsaw. So let me tell you a little bit more about the situation in our city. Our city is suffering from a crisis. When Russians entered our city, Ukrainian cities, the majority of citizens had to leave their houses. The majority decided to go abroad. Some people decided to come back, but a part of those refugees decided to stay in other countries. Right now, we have problems with energy, and it influences the business. The companies are forced to closing their facilities. Employees are not paid on time. They're searching for different employment. They move to different cities. But still, there are people who come to Konotop. They search for a job. They're looking for a job that's very often not related to their qualifications, but they want to make sure that they can earn money to support their families. Right now, our city is ready for cooperation. We're looking for partners. We want to search our employees to other places abroad to make sure that they gain experience. We want to develop. We want to make sure that the labor force is back to our city. Svitlana, what kind of initiatives are present in your city when it comes to foreign capital? Have you made or are you making any decisions in that area? What kind of proposals do you have for investors in your city? We have a project, and I believe that will be something interesting for foreign investors. And as I said, we are ready for cooperation. We're open to cooperation. If anybody is interested in that kind of cooperation, as I said, we are ready. Thank you very much. So, a question to Natalia. Natalia Holczynkova,
Wspomniała Pani o tym właśnie, że Państwo macie już przewidziany program dla Ukraińców, przedsiębiorców, którzy będą chcieli
entrepreneurs from
miasto,
Ukraine who'd like to reconstruct the cities, build new factories.
jak tutaj do Pani
But I have a similar question.
Na co będzie mógł liczyć kapitał zagraniczny,
What can you offer to a foreign investor if they want to cooperate with you?
Я б хотіла розказати, користуючись нагодою, про переваги
нашого
міста. По-перше, ми знаходимося від
possibility to talk a little bit more about the advantages of our city. We're 150 kilometers from Kiev. Our city is green. 20% of our area is green. We're close to the river. We have many parks. We have fresh air. And we want to develop that green policy. We want to be green. We want to be environmentally friendly. When it comes to what we can offer to investors, we plan to make sure that we have initiatives engaging European and global community. This is a city that can be a hub for meetings. You can arrange a meeting not in a capital that's full of traffic, that faces with various problems, but in our city you can relax and you can organize your business event. This is our proposal for the future. We see ourselves as a city where you can relax, you can find a place full of energy. And right now we're working on a huge project of a rehab center. That's a center for people who suffered from psychological and physical harm, and it will be a green hub. And a person who is traumatized can come there with her or his family. They can be provided with healing procedures, medical procedures, and of course we talk about other possibilities too. We talk about IT sector. Before the war, we had many open projects. People who lived in our city were using the proximity of Kiev, but the prices were lower and the salaries were competitive, and this is our advantage. We have various IT companies who had the headquarters or the offices in our city. So we see ourselves as a city good for logistics, good for life, for relax. Our strategy is based also on other business proposals. We're also a historical city. We were founded 1,300 years ago. We're an interesting place for tourists. We want to show the history because Chernigov was the second city after Kiev that was developing, that was an economic center in history. So feel welcome, and we encourage everyone to visit us. Thank you very much. We know that this barrier on the labor market is blurred. We know that we have many refugees coming to Poland, and this is a key element of creating the new labor market. That's why I'd like to ask Svitlana.
Pani prezydent, pani jest 7 lat w Polsce, ponad.
You've been in Poland for 7 years.
Jako też osoba na rynku pracy.
You are present on the labor market.
Nie chcemy pozbywać obywateli Ukrainy.
We don't want to get rid of Ukrainian citizens. We want to develop, we want to motivate each other. Could you tell us, what's your opinion? What's a chance for people coming to Poland to stay here and develop their abilities, their skills? That's a good question. I think that the greatest challenge for the refugees in Poland is the integration.
Ludzie przyjechali nie tak jak ja 7 lat temu,
People, well, I came here 7 years ago.
Wojną, która rozpoczęła się na terytorium
Some people decided to come to Poland when the war at the eastern part of Ukraine started, but right now we have war refugees. And that means that they were not willing to come to Poland. It doesn't matter whether we talk about Polish market or other markets, other countries. So I think that people know that they were forced to coming here. And that's one of the barriers that stops them from being active on the labor market, because they treat Poland as a place where they feel safe, but they want to go back. We know that less than 50% of people who received aid from our center want to stay in Poland and work here. What we've done so far and what was done by the authorities, local authorities, government, that's a huge effort. And that's a step in the path of employing Ukrainians. We need to create good conditions for refugees to stay in our country. On the other hand, I believe that we also invest a lot in the reconstruction of Ukraine, rebuilding the cities and encouraging them to going back to the country. Thank you very much. Dear Minister, let's talk about the most up-to-date statistics. We know that 78% of refugees from Ukraine decided to get a job. Some of them part-time jobs, full-time jobs. But more than 50% of them wants to find another better job. The majority of them works below their qualities, but 13% out of them is satisfied with the current job. You're very close to people who need help. Could you tell us, could you advise, where should we start What should we do, or what should refugees do to make sure that they can find their place in the labor market?
Ja myślę, że to nie jest tylko problem
I
osób,
think
które
that this is
przyjechały do
not
nas z
only
Ukrainy,
about
znalazły swoje
people who
zatrudnienie. To jest
came
również problem
here
wielu
from
młodych
Ukraine.
ludzi
I
z
believe that this is a
polskim
problem
obywatelstwem.
of
Nie
many young
wszyscy z nas są
people, also
zadowoleni z
Polish citizens. Not
zawodów, które
everybody is
wykonują i
satisfied
bardzo
with
często
their
też pracujemy
jobs.
poniżej swoich
We
kompetencji.
work
Ale myślę,
below
że to, o
our
czym wspomniałam, o tych
qualifications.
działaniach, które są
What I said
podejmowane, jak
before,
chociażby w ramach
the
projektu,
efforts
który jest
that are
realizowany
included
dla osób
in our
dorosłych, osób, które
projects for
potrzebują
adults,
takie wsparcie w
who get
odnalezieniu się na rynku
support
pracy,
in terms of
w tych
finding their
kwestiach
place in the
związanych z
labor market.
porozumiewaniem się z różnego rodzaju
Communication, as I
urzędami,
said, so
czyli
how
właśnie
to get information
projektem
from various
Szansa,
offices, the
nowe
Chance
możliwości dla
project,
dorosłych,
new possibilities for
aby
adults.
poszukać też takiej wspólnej drogi
I would
rozwoju ścieżki
advise
zawodowej
to
z doradcą
search
zawodowym, z osobą,
help of
która
a counselor,
znajdzie te
professional counselor,
najlepsze
somebody
aspekty
who can point
w danej
out
osobie i
the
pomoże też
advantages,
w
strengths
odnalezieniu tych
of that person and
kompetencji,
can
czy
help
społecznych, czy
finding the
zawodowych,
best
tak
job
aby lepiej
competencies
funkcjonować
so
w
that the
życiu
person can
codziennym.
function
Więc
better
myślę, że
in the
jest to
daily life.
takie miejsce, gdzie
I think
możemy
that this is a
znaleźć,
place where
znaleźć takie
you
informacje.
can
Zachęcam do
find
odwiedzenia strony
information.
Fundacji
I
Rozwoju
encourage
Systemu
everyone
Edukacji. Tam więcej
to visit
informacji
the
na temat
page
tego
of
projektu.
the
Również urzędy
Foundation for
pracy
Education
świadczą
and
tego
Development, and
typu
also labor
usługi,
offices
nie tylko dla
provide
obywateli
such
polskich, ale
services,
również i
not only
uchodźców
for
z
Polish
Ukrainy,
citizens,
gdzie
but also for
poprzez
Ukrainian
współpracę z
refugees.
doradcami możemy znaleźć te
When
lepsze
you
miejsca
cooperate
i
with
lepsze miejsca do
counselors, you can
pracy.
find better
Na
jobs.
pewno kwestie związane też z podnoszeniem
When it comes
takiej
to
wiedzy
development,
wśród
getting
przedsiębiorców
new
jest bardzo
qualifications
istotne
and
z
knowledge
punktu
of
widzenia
businessmen, that's
podejścia
also
do
important when
uchodźcy z
it comes to
Ukrainy. Tak
approach
jak już
towards
wielokrotnie tutaj
refugees.
mówiliśmy, to nie są
We've
osoby,
mentioned that
mówiła
many
moja
times.
poprzedniczka też przed chwilą, to nie są osoby, które z własnej
Those
woli przyjechały do
people
Polski szukać
fled the
zatrudnienia, tylko ze
country because
względu na
they were
agresję Rosji w
forced
ich
to
państwie.
do it.
Muszą
They did
poszukiwać
it because of
tych
the Russian aggression.
nowych wyzwań życiowych,
They
muszą
need to face
stawiać
new
czoła nowym wyzwaniom
challenges.
życiowym. Więc myślę, że również podejście pracodawców jest
So
bardzo
the
istotne w tym
approach, the
kontekście
attitude of
i
employers is also
właśnie
important.
podnoszenie wiedzy w tym zakresie wśród
We need to
przedsiębiorców
make
jest bardzo
sure
istotne
that
i
we
myślę, że w tym
increase
obszarze też
awareness
chcielibyśmy
of employers,
realizować różne
and we'd like
inicjatywy,
to
podejmować różne
have
działania, chociażby
various
przy wsparciu
initiatives in
środków
that area.
europejskich już z
We'd like
perspektywy
to make sure
21+.
that we can spend European
Dziękuję
funds
bardzo, pani minister.
on that. Thank you very much.
Pytanie do pani
Another
mer,
question,
zastępcy
a
mera
question to the deputy
miasta
mayor
Konotop,
from
Svitlany
Konotop,
Samsonenko.
Svitlana.
Pani mer, jakie są zagrożenia, jeżeli chodzi o
What
rynek
kind of
pracy, ten
threats
odbudowany,
in terms of
ponieważ
labor market
po
do you
wojnie,
see?
jak zostanie odbudowany,
After the war, when the city,
bo
the labor market is reconstructed,
dysproporcja pomiędzy
the
płacą na
discrepancies
Ukrainie, a płacą
between the
w Polsce, czy
salary
też
in
w
Ukraine
Europie
of
jest bardzo
salary
duża.
in
Czy
Poland
państwo się nie
or
obawiacie, że pomimo tej
or
odbudowy
Europe
i
will
tak,
be
i tak,
huge?
tak
Are
jak
you afraid of
Polacy
this?
wyjeżdżali za granicę
We
właśnie
had that
szukając lepszej pracy,
situation in
ale też
Poland.
lepiej
Poles
płatnej,
were
to i
leaving the
tak
country
samo
to
będzie
find
jednak u
better
państwa, że
jobs. Are you afraid of the
wiele osób
possibility that this will
wyemigruje
happen
w
in
celach
Ukraine,
zarobkowych,
that
żeby
people will
poprawić swój
leave the
byt?
country to find better jobs?
Перш за все хочу зазначити, що ми не
First of
хочемо,
all,
щоб
I
з
wanted
України
to
їхали
say
люди.
that
Ми хочемо, щоб
we
вони
don't
всі
want people to
залишалися
leave
у нас
Ukraine. We
в
want
Україні.
everybody to stay
Щоб ті, хто
in Ukraine.
виїхав, обов'язково повернулися назад
We
в
want
Україну.
people
Щоб
who
вони не
left to
залишалися в
come
інших
back.
містах.
We don't want them to
Наші люди
stay in
повинні
other
жити у
places,
нас.
other
Ми,
cities.
як
Our
місцева влада,
citizens should
як
live
вся
in
влада в
Ukraine.
Україні будемо намагатися
And
створити
as
належні умови
local
праці,
authorities and national
належну
authorities will
заробітну плату, щоб
attempt
вона
to
була не
create
нижчою
good
від
labor
європейської.
conditions,
Ми
the right
прагнемо,
levels
щоб,
of remuneration so that they are not
переймаючи,
lower
наприклад,
than the European
досвід
ones.
в інших країн, ми будемо
When
покращувати
taking
ту ж саму
over
медицину в
experience
себе
from
в
other
країні, в себе
countries, we
я
also want
безпосередньо
to
в
improve
своєму
healthcare
місті.
services in our country.
Зараз дефіцит у нас
in our city as well. Right now, the deficit of employees is very big in our city. Most men have been conscripted. They fight at war. So there is nobody to operate machines and equipment. There are no people who could clean or to take over vacancies or jobs which are supposed to be taken by men. That's why we want to create jobs and the level of remuneration which our employees should receive, which Ukrainians should receive. Thank you.
Panie prezesie, do pana jeszcze tak pytanie, bo mamy już mało czasu.
Chairman, there is one more question for you. IT industry.
Ukraina przed wojną świetnie się rozwijała w tej
Ukraine
branży.
before war was developing very well in this industry. There were a lot of good professionals, specialists.
Tą branżę bardzo mocno rozwijamy.
In Poland we have also been developing IT industry quite well. We are quite important on this global map of IT industry. However, young Ukrainians, and I really respect them when it comes to IT industry and their development. So how does it look when it comes to cooperation in this industry, cooperation between Ukraine and the rest of the world? How many specialists from Ukraine are available on the market? I know it's also a matter of remote work. They can also work from Ukraine for international companies, maybe you among others. Yes. I founded a startup some time ago which dealt with what you've just mentioned, Rafał. And it's clear here. Ukraine, before the Russian aggression, was called a reservoir of engineers. Not only IT-related engineers, but all kinds of engineers. They have very good polytechnics in Ukraine, which educate very good specialists. Remote work is one thing, because in order to do it, you need to have access to electricity, to power, and the internet. We know that there is a problem with that. But on the other hand, we often talk about remote work, but even in the IT sector, this relocation is very often necessary. And this wave of engineers, I think, is still ahead of us. We know that first we have to stop the aggressor. There is law which, in case of men, forbids leaving Ukraine. It refers to men between 18 and 60 years of age, as far as I remember. So it makes it impossible for them to leave, to relocate, and it's nothing strange. But I think that just after the war, it will be the time when there will be at least 50,000 vacancies in the IT sector now. They are already available now, and I think it will be filled, or they will be filled, not now, but after the war has ended, after the ban on leaving Ukraine has been lifted. There is no language barrier because we all speak English. Whether it's Polish market or Ukrainian market, English is the fundamental skill. When it comes to nurses, the example which I mentioned, it was a difficult problem, a big problem, but here in IT industry, this is not a problem. It's English. Thank you, Chairman. At the end, I have one conclusion that comes to mind. That we have a lot to offer to each other when it comes to the labor market. We all have a lot of experience. However, at different stages of life, we need the help. Sometimes this help is related to the people who are excluded, people with disabilities, and sometimes it's counseling I think the minister can counsel us here and she can give us tips about what to do in order for our nations to speak with one voice in the labor market. As somebody mentioned today, we have such potential in both countries that the rest of the world can't even see what they are losing, so we have to stick together. And we have quite a lot of audience here, so I wanted to ask you if you have any questions to our panelists, to the minister.
Thank you. Я хотів би тут, скажімо так, приєднатися до слів співгромадян, але щоб було більш зрозуміло, я, мабуть, скажу англійською мовою, стосовно regarding high salaries that Poland offers to Ukrainian employees versus those in Ukraine. So I want all people here to understand what is Russian victory in Ukraine. Sometimes we think it's military victory. It's not. Genocide has many faces. You know, deportation of people is a form of genocide, just for you to know. When you take small children, you move them to Russia, it's a genocide. When you take nation, move them elsewhere. I mean, I don't want to go deeply into that politics, but if Ukrainians do not return to Ukraine in sufficient numbers, it will be a victory of Russia. Because for Russia, the goal is to make desert out of Ukraine. No people, no businesses, victory. And then every dictator in the world will know, okay, maybe I will not win militarily, but I will, I will destroy sufficiently so that this country cannot stand on its own feet. What does it mean? It means that I have a feeling, I'm in this discourse for the first time, but I strongly feel that Poland wants Ukrainians to stay here. It's your national interest. It's like you have sovereign rights for that, but please remember that if you want Ukraine to really win, you will have to somehow compromise maybe on this interest, because Ukrainians should live in their land, so to say. And another thing, which will probably make the picture a bit more optimistic, it is really widely expected that once this dramatic war finishes, huge amounts of reconstruction funds will be injected into Ukraine. Really, it will be hundreds of billions of dollars, which means that international corporations are already today thinking about it. And I'm working with Ukrainian businesses, and sometimes I get business volunteers that tell me, I will help your companies free of charge. Why? Because I want to have a place in Ukrainian reconstruction market post-war. This is just to say that I expect that salaries of professionals in Ukraine, once this war will finish, will be really internationally competitive. And second thing, I also think that international corporations that now hire Ukrainians in droves will also find it wise to implant those Ukrainians into Ukraine as departments of their international corporations. Why? Because those people are Ukrainians, they will naturally and organically live in Ukraine, and on the other side, they already know corporate culture of those companies. So, yeah, this is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo panu. Jeszcze jest jedno tutaj pytanie.
There is one more question I can see.
Ja myślę, że dyktator jednego nie przewidział.
I think a dictator hasn't predicted one thing, that us, Polish people, and you, the Ukrainians, will be one nation, because this is how it looks when it comes to people. we really are a unity. The dictator didn't predict this. In spite of so many people leaving Ukraine or having left Ukraine, both the Polish and the Ukrainians are a unity on this market. Hello, my name is Alexander Shevchenko. I'm the chairman of the Foundation Ukraine SOS in Lviv. I am also an entrepreneur and a refugee from Kharkiv. Now with my family, I live in Lviv. And I am really grateful to Poland for this 4 months during which my wife was a refugee in Warsaw, during which she found a job. She's a hairdresser, and she found a job in Warsaw. Now, we decided to go and live in Lviv, to go back to Ukraine. But not everybody is able to do this. Not everybody can get adapted back there. So the mission and aim of our foundation that we set up in Lviv, we have a team of entrepreneurs from the East. Our mission and our role in Lviv, we are a mediator and middleman in this supply chain of volunteers.
From Europe to the East, because we will naturally have lots of contacts over there. What I'm trying to say, and I'm trying to say, ask fast a question. And we see that one of the sorry for switching languages. Ми бачимо, що найважнішими такими сторонами в Україні тієї відпорності, що Україна виявила, є такі 6 пунктів, які мусять бути спірами першочергові. То перше, то организации саможонду, як Чернігов,
is the organization of local authorities, such as in Chernihiv. They first met. The second point is foundation, charity foundations, NGOs.
Чим би хто не займував,
whatever they do, they started supporting refugees, they started supporting the army. So this is this charity help, charity assistance. We have a lot of volunteers in Ukraine and volunteering organizations. We are entrepreneurs. We are also volunteers. There are also municipal services and the military, but at the level of individuals. And the last 6th point is small and middle-sized companies in Ukraine. This panel is very interesting to me because it tries to answer the questions about what happens in the labor market in Ukraine. You've talked about the labor market in Poland, how you are managing with the refugees in Poland. And secondly, I am personally very grateful for supporting my wife. But I wanted to ask you, so maybe it will be a question to the minister. Are there any serious talks about supporting such entrepreneurs like me? Entrepreneurs who could stay, who would like to stay in Ukraine, because now I have opened the business for the second time in Lviv, because I lost my business in Kharkov. So we need some access through some funds, etc. We really need access to these funds from the European foundations, from other sources. Because as of now, the problem is that we have 3 or 4 possibilities, and for small companies, it's like $5,000, nothing more. That's it. So I will ask one more time, do you have any perspective for another year
to strengthen this, grant funding for businesses and entrepreneurs in Ukraine, and może nie wiem jak to zrobić, może przez Credobank.
Maybe I don't know how to do it, maybe take a loan.
Tak samo. Dziękuję.
So maybe you can offer some loans as well.
Ale dziękujemy bardzo. Pani minister, oddaję
Thank you very much
głos.
for the question. Minister, the floor is yours.
Dziękuję bardzo. To są bardzo ważne kwestie, które zostały tutaj
mentioned very important issues. You said and you talked about what we had been talking here when we talked about the recovery funds. We know that there will be various funds, and you need to be cautious. You need to pay attention to whom you cooperate with, especially when we talk about the recovery, reconstruction of Ukraine. I think that taking into consideration every aspect, everything that has happened since February, we believe that we should use that Polish experience, so the cooperation with Polish companies, so that you have some possibilities. We can share the experience as a country cooperating with various huge economies. That's why I encourage SMEs from Poland to cooperate with the counterparties from Ukraine. When it comes to financing, ladies and gentlemen, when we think about Central European funds, we, as a country, we support Ukraine. We want Ukraine to be a member of the European Union. And we have experience that we can share. We also can share the experience in terms of using pre-joining EU funds, because those funds are accessible too. They can be spent on supporting the business. We, being a member of EU, we can support SMEs, but those countries that operate in Poland, the companies that move to Poland, and we have European funds that can support that. Of course, we know that we can cooperate in other areas, exchanging ideas, exchanging experience. We can support startups that are created in Ukraine, or administrative activities. We've been cooperating with various ministries. I think that this support for SMEs that want to reconstruct their business in Ukraine will happen. It will continue in the development, recovery funds, European funds. If I may, I'd like to add. I'd like to reply to the question. I'm also a representative of an SME. I believe that the greatest change, let me just say that I come from the Silesian region. I'm 35 years old, part of my family comes from Ukraine. When it comes to my perspective, the greatest input is the shift of way of thinking, change of your mindset. In the past, I thought that you were looking into Moscow. That was your perspective. I thought that you had been thinking that you could do more with Russia, and now it has changed. We highlight that being together, Polish people, Ukrainian people, we can do more. This political leverage has changed. This is a shift of the approach in Ukrainian society, but also in Polish society. We feel as a one nation, but that was not visible in the past. In the past, as an entrepreneur, I was afraid of a Russian mafia. I'm being honest. And right now, my mindset is different. I think that you can push Russians away. If you do it, you can see Poles in Ukraine. And I think that this is the best perspective. I agree what Minister said. She said that in the first two sentences, I believe, that this geopolitical importance has changed. Finally, you may say, we, Poles, we've always perceived Russians as enemy. Minister cannot say that, but I can. And when I was checking Ukraine, I thought that you didn't understand that. Something changed with the accession of Crimea, and right now we have this final moment, final act. And we know that that changed a lot. To finish the panel, to finish the discussion, we'd like to express our gratitude to Minister for being here. We're glad that you managed to join the event. Thank you, dear guests, CEO, Director, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your presence here, because the summit, and especially this panel connected to the labor market, is the most important during that event. This is the panel that shows the strength of the Polish-Ukrainian cooperation in terms of labor. If a person has a goal, professional goal, they can fight for the future. Thank you very much once again.